ocean waves to every stage. Omega-3 fuels life's next page. DHA.
Welcome to The Good Oil. I'm Bassam Hallak, and this podcast explores all things omega-3, especially the science, made simply and easy to understand. Whether you're passionate about omega-3 or simply curious that there is an impact on future health, The Good Oil brings you the insights you're looking for. Today's episode is special. We're joined by two incredible guests from GOED, the global organisation for EPA and DHA, Alan Schutt, Managing Director, who leads global industry efforts, and Kaitlin, Roke, Director of Scientific Communication, who explores and makes complex research accessible for consumers and business. We'll dive into topics like the latest omega-3 science, industry evolution and challenges, sustainability, and what's ahead for omega-3 space. Welcome, Alan and Kaitlin.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
It's good to have you. Well, let's kick things off. So, Alan, let me ask you this. Who is GOED and what role does it play in the global EPA and DHA omega-3 space?
Thank you. Well, as you said, we are the global organization for EPA and DHA Omega-3s, and we have more than 200 members around the world throughout the omega-3 supply chain. So this includes fisheries who are actually harvesting fish to turn into fish oil. It includes their customers who are further processing the oils, and it also includes finished products on store shelves, whether that's a seafood product or a dietary supplement. So we're covering the whole category, and our goal is to advocate and protect the category and also to make sure that we are helping our members to grow their omega-3 businesses and increase consumption because it's so important for public health.
And your members are basically, are they mainly in North America, Asia, Europe, or is it pretty much split?
All of the above. We actually have, we started out as more of a North American organization, and now we have more members in Asia and in Europe than in North America. So we're very, very global.
Good. So for the listeners who, interested in getting, omega-3s, how does GOED champion product integrity and consumer trust across the global omega-3 landscape?
Well, the whole reason GOED was started in the first place was because of quality. And we're actually going to celebrate our 20th anniversary next year. And the 12 companies who started GOED were concerned about having a third party to hold them accountable to make sure that they were continuing to make quality products. So we have a GOED voluntary monograph that all of our members are required to follow as a condition of membership. And this is among the strictest quality standards in the world. So we're very careful about making sure that the products on the market are products that consumers can trust.
Oh, good. And I've been with the industry 10 years. I think you've been with the industry
A little bit longer.
A bit longer. Kaitlin, 5 years. So in your case, Alan, how has GOED's mission evolved over the years as consumers' awareness have grown? And clearly it has grown. Mm-hmm. You could see that. But how has it changed?
Yeah, consumer awareness has definitely grown. We've done consumer research in different countries to understand awareness levels, and they are very high about the knowledge of the existence of omega-3s. We still have some work to do in terms of education and about the specific benefits, I should say. And I would say the way GOED has changed is in the first part of the first half of our existence, we were doing more to understand the category and protect the category and make sure that governments and regulatory bodies understood the science behind EPA and DHA. Yeah. And then in the second half, or the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been doing more to do that consumer education and health practitioner education because this is so important for public health, but there's still more education that needs to be done. So that's certainly part of our mission. Yeah.
And with regards to GOED and what it does, how does it influence, things like policies or industry standards? For the sake of consumers, how does the GOED help, sort of leverage that and make sure that the policies and standards are actually kept up?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's to get a government authority or a health organization to listen to you is certainly takes some time and effort. But we have done that work in various geographies around the world, and I think the best example in the recent past is there's a proposed limit for contaminants in Europe for a particular thing called MOA, mineral oil aromatic hydrocarbon, and it wasn't reasonable or logical for our industry. So we gathered a lot of data and wrote a letter to the European Commission that made them actually adjust what their recommendation is going to be. So to us, this is a big win if we can make sure that different health organizations or authorities around the world understand this is our industry cares about quality. We have a lot of science. Let's make sure that that's front and center with any decisions or standards you're setting up.
Yeah. And I'm assuming GOED collaborate. I mean, you are the conjugate between regulators, researchers, and brands, right? And
We
how
try.
Do you, and how do you do that? I mean, is it through communication or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. You know, we have a regulatory expert who is really the ones, along with our technical director, who is figuring out what the story is to tell to regulators. You know, the research, I know Kaitlin's going to talk a lot more about all the science. You know, the research is what is supporting these conversations at the regulator level.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the brands or our member companies are the ones who have to take that information and explain it to their audience, to the consumer. So it's really all connected, but the backbone of all of it is science.
Excellent. Well, Kaitlin, I want to get you in here now. So omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, are well known and documented to be critical for our health. But not everyone knows exactly why, and all of our listeners probably don't know why, but they want to learn. Could you break it down, down the essential roles or health roles of EPA, DHA, and why is it considered a foundational nutrient?
Yeah, happy to. And I think for me, it's important to take a step back further just to figure out why we're even talking about EPA and DHA. So when we think about our diet, we kind of have three main categories, right? We have carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So if we think about our diet as a whole that way, so in the category of fats, then we have trans fats, saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats. Okay, so we're going to pick polyunsaturated fats. And then within polyunsaturated fats, we have omega-3 fats. And then EPA and DHA are a type of omega-3 fat. So to kind of orient all of us, we have to think about the components to our diet and then take, I think we're 4 or 5 levels deep now into actually getting to what EPA and DHA are. So once we kind of have that behind us, then we can start thinking about why they're so important. So the first thing is that they're in almost every cell of our body, which is amazing. So our body has a way to use these nutrients as part of our cellular makeup. And then we also can consume them in the diet, and we can take them in through food, so fatty fish and seafood, or we can also take them in the form of supplements. So our body keeps them and uses them, and we can eat more of them. So if our bodies are having some, or if we're increasing our intake, there's 4 main areas that GOED focuses on in terms of the really strong health benefits. So those 4 areas are heart health, brain health, eye health, and pregnancy and prenatal health. So those 4 areas have really, really strong science behind them. And for consumers or people who are having some omega-3s or more omega-3s in their diet, we see benefits for their health in those 4 areas.
Oh, fantastic. So I know there's always a bit of confusion around the differences between EPA and DHA. Can you maybe explain it in simple terms for our listeners? What makes it unique and why are they so, both so important for our health?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, when we think about going from our diet at a big level and then going down smaller and smaller, from a chemistry, a molecule perspective, they actually, EPA and DHA are different shapes. So they look slightly different if we actually were to draw the molecules, which none of us are doing on a regular basis unless you go back to chemistry class.
Yeah.
So they actually are different in shape. They look different. But in our body, they play slightly different roles. So at a really high level, usually we say that DHA is kind of for structure. So it finds its way into a lot of our cells, into the cell membranes. And EPA we find less so in the cell membranes, but it seems to be used quite quickly. So if we think DHA structure and EPA metabolism. And but they're both, they come together in fish and seafood, so they're often kind of a unit, and so we often find them together in supplements as well. Although you can find a supplement just DHA and some with just DHA, they're often kind of 2 peas in a pod. So they both play important roles, and as the research evolves, we learn more about where certain areas, one, let's say DHA, might play a really special and important role for pregnancy and prenatal health, where EPA might play a special role for maybe brain health and cognition. So they have their unique roles, but they're both so important, and we're really just not getting very much of them in our typical diets.
And can I just ask you, with DHA and EPA, you mentioned those 4 categories, brain health, heart health, and prenatal and so forth. Is there a better connection with DHA than EPA, or preference, I should say, with those 4?
It kind of depends on what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So if we go just briefly through each of the categories, for heart health, most of the studies are done with both EPA and DHA,
Yep.
and that's how they're typically found. That's how they're found in food. Most supplements have both EPA and DHA, so we see a lot of those studies actually looking at a combination of both. There are some studies, when we think about brain health, there are some studies that focus on a high EPA product, which I always find surprising actually, because it's DHA that's really high concentration in the brain. So then the studies looking at people who have depression, supplementing high EPA is a bit of a surprise, because that's not what we might expect given that the brain likes DHA so
Correct,
much.
yeah.
But it tends to be that there's a little bit stronger effect with higher EPA dose in people who have depression. But pregnancy and prenatal health, it's actually DHA that has the recommendation. So women who are pregnant, it's recommended that they consume between 300 and 700 milligrams of DHA specifically during their pregnancy to help reduce the risk of preterm and early preterm birth. So it does seem like there might be conditions that benefit from one versus the other, but both together, they both have such important roles. We encourage people to have both of them.
Just wanted to add
Yeah,
one thing,
yeah.
because in your home country of Australia, the whole pregnancy story is amazing, because there's
Correct.
been such good work done
Yeah.
looking at DHA. And I think it's a combination of EPA and DHA, but as Kaitlin said, the science is very strong, particularly on DHA.
Yeah.
But there's work being done in Australia where this is being given to pregnant women. They're being educated about this. They're seeing much better outcomes. And you asked me earlier about policy. This is actually something where the science is being turned into policy, and it's really, really exciting for those of us not in Australia to see this possibly being able to move to other places.
Oh, there's no doubt that the research in that prenatal area has really excelled, and some amazing, not just in Australia, but other places as well. Kaitlin, just in terms of, you mentioned studies, like what's one study or finding that you personally were surprised or excited about?
Yeah, studies that excite me are going to sound really nerdy, and I hope they excite everyone
Be nerdy,
who's a
be
good
nerdy.
reader. So from a clinical perspective, a study, it doesn't necessarily matter the outcome to make me feel excited. It's how the study is designed. And study design is so important because the 3 of us could each publish a study on the same outcome. But if our study designs are not robust, if we haven't chosen the correct supplement or placebo, if we haven't given them the supplement for long enough, we're not going to see the outcomes that we want. So a trial design that has a long enough duration, that measures a robust outcome, those are so exciting. And it can be on any outcome, but we just want a really solid study design. And then something else that we like to read, especially at GOED, are meta-analysis and systematic reviews. So that's where they bring all of the research together. And so those studies that have a really strong statistical analysis, then we can really be confident in what the data is telling us. So again, if we bring 5 studies or 10 studies together, if they're strong studies and they're evaluated statistically in a really robust way, we can feel really good about the totality of evidence. So those are not a specific study, but those are study designs that make me really, really excited to read them, and I think are so important for the omega-3 category because they give people so much confidence behind the health claims, and they can feel really good about what we're saying related to the benefits of omega-3s.
And there's a lot of messaging, scientific messaging, right? But then the audience is different, right? So how do you tailor that messaging to different audiences, whether it's healthcare, personnel or professionals or everyday consumers, right? They're very different. How do you do that?
Mm-hmm. At GOED, we spend more of our, we spend some of our time talking to healthcare professionals. And so some of those groups are nurse practitioners, dietitians. Great if we can talk to a doctor, not always as easy. But when we talk to dietitians, we want to give them the background and the understanding about omega-3s. So sometimes it's educating what are EPA and DHA? Where do you find them in the diet? what sources are high in EPA and DHA? How can you encourage someone to try a supplement, and what does that look like? We have resources for dietitians and healthcare professionals, infographics. We have a website called Fats of Life that kind of gives them the background story so that when they talk to their patients, they feel really good about why they're recommending an increase in omega-3s in their diet. When we talk to consumers, we have an Instagram account, Always Omega-3s, which is great for consumers and healthcare practitioners. But we're trying to meet people where they are, and we hope that dietitians are doing that too. We want to know, how do you choose a supplement type? Is a liquid going to be better for you, or a capsule? We want to know what's going to work for their lifestyle. And to be honest, we're a lot of steps away from the consumer on a day-to-day basis. So GOED really relies on our members and brands to talk to their consumers and bring some of our messaging to those consumers and say, hey, here's our product, and here's why you might want to consider taking it, or we have a new format that might work for you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that there's another category of another group of people that we're also talking to that wasn't really on our radar before, and this is the influencers.
Yeah.
But, because we are global, we've done a lot of work in Asia and in Korea and in China in particular. There's this whole influencer audience that wants to talk in an infomercial for a half hour to the consumer. So they want a lot of additional information, and they're not educated in the way that dietitians are, and they don't know the nutrition. So we're trying to make sure that they're telling the right story and have the right information when they're saying a lot of things about a product that we want to make sure that it's true. So a little more challenging with that audience, but we think it's something that's also important to make sure that we're supporting the consumers in all the different markets.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you this question, but I'll probably to both of you. This world is full of social media, and messages can go very fast and very viral, right? So how do you handle skepticism or misinformation in the nutrition space around omega-3? And there's a lot, right? We talk about ALAs, and there's just so much on social media. So how do you handle that to make sure the consumers get the right message?
It's hard.
It is hard. Yeah, and there's, as you're saying, there's a lot of loud voices, and this makes it really challenging. One challenge is that GOED itself is a small team. So if we were to fight every battle of misinformation, we don't have time and capacity to do that. And is that the right approach? Either is going one person at a time the right way, and not everyone wants to talk and wants to hear your side of the story. So what we focus on a lot of at GOED is putting out credible information, putting out resources that can be shared. So we really focus on getting information out there that we hope can be reshared and shared from an educational perspective. So instead of going one loud voice at a time, we try and say, come to our platform. We have some good information to share with you. Hopefully you can share that with your consumers. We're always happy to have a conversation with anyone who wants to talk to us about omega-3s. But as you said, it's, even the category of omega-3s, you go to the store and see a box of crackers that says omega-3s, and you think, really? So you flip over the label and you're like, there's no EPA and DHA in here. So not that we're going to go after the cracker company, but that's an example of misinformation too. So not only sometimes are influencers telling us something that's not exactly correct, but sometimes food companies and products are a little bit misleading. They're not telling you something incorrect, but when we're thinking about omega-3s, we want to focus on EPA and DHA. And that's not always what we're finding in a product that says omega-3s.
Yeah. I mean, technically it's right. I mean, it's an omega-3, but it's ALA, and we haven't spoken about ALA. So can I ask you just, I know, we weren't going to talk about it, but could you maybe explain the ALA scenario like this cracker example so the listeners can understand what it all means, and then how does it affect the benefits of DHA?
Yeah, thank you. I think that, makes sense with that example. So again, when we think about our diet, when we go fat, polyunsaturated fat, omega-3 fat, there are three main omega-3 fats, one being ALA, and then these two fatty acids, EPA and DHA. So they have long scientific names, which some people know and some people don't, but they're found naturally in different sources in the diet. So ALA are found in plant-based sources like flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts. So when you see a product that says omega-3 in a cracker that has flaxseed, that is correct. It does have ALA, the omega-3, in the flaxseed cracker. The robust science has really been focused on EPA and DHA. So that's where we find consumers are a bit misled that ALA and flaxseed are still really healthy parts of our diet. Absolutely, we encourage people to consume those. But the health benefits like heart, brain, eye, prenatal, that's coming from EPA and DHA intake.
Yeah.
So we really want to encourage people to look for sources of fatty fish and seafood or supplements that have EPA and DHA. So that's the main difference and where we get some confusion from a consumer perspective.
I would just add that enough people get ALA compared to EPA and DHA, and 80% of the world's population doesn't get enough EPA and DHA. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us to educate specifically about EPA and DHA.
Yeah. And Kaitlin, just on one more thing on the ALA, it can convert to DHA. Did you want to just talk about that in a low conversion
thank
rate?
you. You're right. So when we think about these fatty acids, we can get them from our diet directly. We can have ALA directly, we can have EPA directly, but our bodies can actually convert ALA into EPA and DHA. Our bodies are amazing and do all sorts of interesting things from a metabolism perspective. So in the body, we take this ALA and through a series of different reactions, it actually makes EPA and DHA. So you might think like, okay, well, let's focus on those flaxseed crackers then. But the problem is our body doesn't actually make very much EPA and DHA itself. So yes, we make some, but there's not very much that's being made, which is why we recommend consuming EPA and DHA directly. So that means from food or supplements. So having it as an additional source in our diet is really important. That internal metabolism process makes some, but not very much. And the research is really focused on the intake of EPA and DHA and those health benefits connected to the increased intake.
Oh, perfect. And so if the consumer wants to, learn more about this, Ellen, so what's the website where they can go to and what resources can they get to?
So alwaysomega3s.com is our consumer-facing website. And as Kaitlin said, we have a lot of infographics on the site, some of them about health benefits, but some also about how do you store your supplements? How do I read a supplement label? So really practical information for the consumer to make good decisions about how to buy a good supplement and how to understand what the benefits are.
Okay, well, that's a wrap for part one for our conversation with Ellen and Kaitlin, where we've explored the science behind EPA, DHA, and what these omega-3s matter for our health. But we're just getting started. Stay tuned for part two, where we shift our focus to industry trends and evolving needs of today's health-conscious consumer.
You're listening to the good oil, where better health lies.